I do not know where this young man lives today because he's living in hiding. And the reason that he's living in hiding is because there are men that are searching for him and want to kill him. Now, he has not committed any crime. He just belongs to the wrong religion. And here's how this happened. This man's name is Hassan. His belief in the Islamic religion is so powerful and fervent that he named one of his sons after Osama bin Laden. He grew up in the Middle East in a radical Islamic family. But he had a scholarly aptitude, and this led him to become a lawyer. Not only that, he became a mullah, that is, a mosque leader and teacher. And eventually he was a government educator responsible for the training of all mullahs in his region. He was also serving as a professor at an Islamic university. He led many pilgrimages to Mecca. He wrote many scholarly articles and books, including a work on Islam that is still studied in some Arabian schools today, Saudi Arabia schools. He trained young men and he encouraged them to join the self-proclaimed Islamic State, that's ISIS. This is what he said about this. He said, because of my job, I couldn't reveal that. I was doing it under the table. In my private sessions and meetings, I always would embrace and encourage people to join ISIS. But he developed a troubled mind. And what troubled him was, as part of his studies, remember, he was a lawyer and a university teacher. And so as part of his educational background, he had studied comparative religions. And in the study of comparative religions, Christianity is one of the major religions of the world. He read the Old Testament, and then he read the New Testament. And he said, I started seeing there were better things there than what we had. And then he said, I found that there were clear mistakes in the Quran. For example, he was bothered by the fact that the Quran said that a Samaritan led worship of the golden calf rather than Aaron, Moses' brother. The problem was there were no Samaritans at that time in Earth's history. Samaria didn't exist yet. He noticed that in the Quran, the story of Haman is set in Egypt instead of in Persia. And he said, there's something that doesn't fit here. He knew what time that story occurred. And then in addition to that, he found that there were linguistic hurdles required to explain the archaic Arabic in the Quran. And the more inconsistencies that he found, the more troubled he became. His faith, his trust in his religion that he had served fervently his whole life was shaken. He said later, even during my many pilgrimages to Mecca, I was troubled with doubt. Why are we going around the Kaaba? He asked himself about the tradition of circling the stone in the center of Mecca's great mosque. I tried to justify that it was Allah's command for us to worship Him, not to worship the Kaaba, but I was not satisfied. I felt like I was actually an idol worshiper anyway. His career as a teacher in this Islamic university came to an abrupt end because of two things. The first thing was he was asked to give 2 lectures. Now, the first lecture he was asked to give was in front of an audience of about 100 women. He was to give a lecture about how Islam honored women. But he said, I knew that that wasn't true. Islamic religion dishonors women, demeans women. And so he got up when he was supposed to give the lecture. He said, I apologize, I cannot give this lecture. Well, that was just the beginning of his trouble. The second lecture that he was requested to give was a lecture about the early military advances of Islam. Many Islamic people refer to this as the Arab openings. But he knew all about the history, but he could no longer present it in a positive light. He said, I saw that what they did was actually criminal. The early wars that were initiated by Islam were criminal events involving the death of an unknown number of thousands of people. And as he, in this lecture, criticized these early conquests, several students sprang up and ran and told the dean, and the dean came immediately and told him to step aside. And he said to the dean, no, you just sit here and listen. And he finished his lecture in which he explained these early Islamic wars were not providential leadings of God, but the work of the devil. He criticized them as criminal intent and criminal actions. The dean was so upset he fired him immediately. But by this time, he was so agitated in mind over what was happening to his religion that he didn't care. He decided he was going to spend full time studying comparative religions and figure out the answer. Now, he was not going to study Christianity because he believed he was a strict Muslim. He believed that all Christians were infidels because they worshiped 3 gods. And they only worship one God, Allah. So the only religions he was even interested in studying were monotheistic religions. So he said, well, I'll study about Zoroastrianism. I'll study about Judaism. I'll study these religions. These actions of his shocked his 2 wives. And his first wife said to him, are you crazy? What are you doing to us? He said, I can no longer accept the teachings of Islam as the truth. She immediately requested and obtained a divorce. His second wife, her name was Manar, and she said, I am patient. I'll stay and wait and see what happens. Well, she was going to need patience, because he was in the beginning of a long ordeal, searching for the truth. His whole life had been shattered because now everything that he devoted his life to, he didn't believe it was true anymore. And so then you have feelings of waste. Why have I wasted my life believing and teaching a religion that isn't true? And he was determined to find the truth. And after he studied for a little while, he decided he was going to become a Jew. He saw the Old Testament. The Old Testament made sense. He wasn't going to study Christianity. He didn't believe in Jesus. And so he got a travel visa, and he traveled to Israel. And he studied with a Jewish rabbi. And he was in the process of converting to Judaism, but he went back home. There were no synagogues in that area because he lived in a country where almost everybody was Muslim. So he was still studying Judaism, but while he was studying, something very interesting happened. Here's what happened. During this time of waiting, he stumbled across the Jesus film airing on a Christian satellite television station. As he watched the crucifixion, he became emotional. He said, "I always felt so sorry for that person as a human to be treated this way. I felt sorry for the Christians." So when he turned the television set off and started talking directly to God the Father. And he started crying out. And this is what he said. He said, "God, why is it taking me years and years of looking for you? Why are you hiding yourself from me? Why are millions of people being lost that don't know you? God, reveal yourself to me, even if it means my death." Why did you let me do all these things? And all of a sudden, he said, this is what he said. "Suddenly, a response came into my mind. I do not know what happened, but I felt the presence of God. A strange power I can feel, but I can't see. But at the same time, it is comforting. I started in my mind having ideas that I never thought of before. It was like somebody was talking to me, but they were talking directly to my mind. There was no sound. And a question would come to my mind, and immediately the answer would come. And suddenly, a new question came to his mind. And that question was this. Is it really strange for God to decide to appear in human flesh? If God is great, as we say He is the greatest, was it impossible for Him to come to this world in human flesh? And in his mind, he began to accept the idea that it was possible that God could come to this world as a man. For the first time in his life, he was open to an idea that he had never thought of before and had always been taught was heresy. And so he said, I decided I needed to find somebody that could explain the Christian religion to me. So he searched. He finally found a Christian church, had a pastor. So he went to see this man. He came into the church. The receptionist at this church was a woman. Well, he was such a strict Muslim and had been for so many years, he could not even look at her in the face. He couldn't make eye contact with a woman. But he finally got introduced to the pastor. And he told the pastor he wanted to learn about the Christian religion. And so the pastor started teaching him the doctrines of Christianity. And he became a Christian. And then this is what happened. He was receiving discipleship training from this pastor. And his wife, now, Manar, she was so troubled by this. She was more trying to get a divorce than ever before. She couldn't. This was worse than being a Jew. Her father also encouraged her to get a divorce. It looked like she was going to divorce her husband, but before she divorced him, what he was doing, he was inviting Muslims into his home, his living room. And he was starting to talk to them about his new religion that he had found. And because he had extensive knowledge of the Islamic religions, and he understood the Islamic mind, he knew how to explain to Muslim people the difference between their religion and Christianity. And these discussions that he had in his living room with these people that he brought in, many of them became Christians. And his wife heard these discussions, and as a result, she eventually became a Christian. In fact, at the present time, over 20 of his extended family have become Christians as a result of his witness, because he is a very effective Christian evangelist to the Muslim people because he understands the Muslim mind. He was a Muslim himself. Well, pretty soon there was trouble. They lived right across the street from a mosque. The police found out that there was an organized effort. They were going to kill him. And an insider warned him. They said, you better flee immediately. You're going to be... So his family had to flee. And today he and his family are living in hiding. There are people that are looking for him to kill him. While he has been in hiding, he has written a book exposing the fallacies of Islam and supporting the Christian faith. They are working to witness to others what they have found in Jesus that their former religion couldn't give them. And they are requesting through Christian believers all over the world to pray for them. And also for their children who at the present time have to live in secret